Graduation time is typically a joyous time for family and friends. Bart Whitaker, 22 years old at the time, announced to his family in December of 2003 that he was graduating from Sam Houston State University, and the family was proud. They gathered together, got in the car, and went out to celebrate at a restaurant. Brad's mother, Patricia, 51 years old, his brother, Kevin, 19 years old, and his father, Kent, 52 years old, all joined in for the celebratory dinner. Sugar Land is a city just southwest of Houston in Texas. It is often touted as one of the best places to live and best suburb in America. It also has a reputation for kind people who care about their communities. Bart and his brother grew up in this happy upper middle class environment, and all seemed well from the outside looking in. But that night of celebration in December of 2003 turned into something no happy family could ever fathom. The family left the restaurant that night in good spirits and headed home. When they reached their home, Bart couldn't find his phone, so his parents and his brother went ahead of him into the house while Bart searched for his long-lost phone. While Bart was searching, his family was entering into a danger zone. Inside the home, they were attacked while Bart was still in the car. His mother and brother were gunned down, but fortunately his father was only wounded. When Bart finally entered the home, he sprung into action, but was shot in the arm despite his efforts, and the armed robbers escaped. His mother was dead, his brother was dead, his father was wounded, and this family will never be the same. As the police investigated this tragedy, I can imagine in the beginning they were on high alert for these brutal killers and were concerned about this pair robbing or killing other people in their homes in the beautiful Sugar Land where life is good. However, during the investigation, the police found that nothing in the Whitaker home was taken during the suspected armed robbery, and that Bart's phone was the only thing reported as stolen. As the police continued to investigate, more suspicious evidence began to shed light on hidden morsels of truths that cast doubt on the true purpose of that seemingly innocent and customary celebratory dinner for Bart's graduation. It was discovered that not only was Bart not actually graduating from Sam Houston State University, but Bart never attended the university. He was not a student there or anywhere for that matter. The police also received a jarring call from a friend of Bart's who claimed that Bart had attempted to hire him to kill his entire family and stage it as an unsuccessful robbery. He turned down Bart's offer, and I was wondering how much time passed in between Bart's conversation with this friend and the robbery, because I would have went to the police immediately if a friend asked me to do that. Well, during my research, I found out this witness was a schoolmate and was privy to many plans Bart had devised to kill his family previously. And eventually the killers that did commit this horrible crime ended up confessing to everything, exposing Bart's final plot that they carried out to kill his entire family that night. And unfortunately, because the schoolmate did not alert the police immediately, Greg Brashear, 25, and neighbor Stephen Champagne, 24, confessed to being hired by Bart Whitaker and also helped the police to locate Bart's cell phone, which they had hidden for him. This whole thing was carefully planned. Bart enjoyed a night out on the town with his family, ate with them, drank with them, and listened to them congratulate him for a false graduation, all the while knowing what was waiting for them at home. How did he look them in the eyes that night with such evil in his heart? Devising this whole plan was horrific enough, but was there ever a time where he said to himself, "What am I doing?" Was there even a hesitation before his family got out of that car that night? I can't wrap my head around this evil. So in the midst of all this very reliable, incriminating evidence that pointed to Bart as the mastermind behind the murder of his mother and brother and attempted murder of his father, Bart Whitaker fled to Mexico to avoid prosecution. Bart assumed a new identity as Rudy Rios and lived there for a significant amount of time. However, eventually the jig was up, and he was brought back to the United States and sentenced to death in March of 2007. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. His schoolmate, who called the cops after the murder, was given immunity to testify for the prosecution. Now, normally, this is usually where the story ends in terms of sentencing, especially with cases that have strong evidence and a fleeing suspect. But for Kent Whitaker, in spite of his son murdering his wife and child and attempting to murder him, Kent Whitaker campaigned tirelessly for his son, who was on death row for years at the Palunkski unit near Livingston, Texas. And 40 minutes before he was to be executed by lethal injection, his sentence was commuted to life in prison without parole by Governor Greg Abbott. Kent Whitaker contended that if his son was put to death, he would be, quote, victimized again if the state put to death his last remaining immediate family member, end quote. Kent's relentless campaign was a success. Mr. Whitaker wrote a book about his experience, and I have so much empathy for this man. The trauma that he experienced at the hands of his own flesh and blood is unimaginable. I hope his son has had some type of awakening through this whole ordeal. Bart did go to college while in prison and completed a bachelor's degree and a master's degree. I'm sure his father is pleased with this accomplishment, but evil enters people for many different reasons we don't always understand. But when you are shown such mercy and love, the only thing you can hope for the perpetrator is that they at least feel remorseful for what they did and create a life behind bars that reflects that inner change. We are familiar with God's mercy, but it's not always practiced by humans. And when we see it in people like Kent Whitaker, people can sometimes be despised by the mercy they show. There have been several speculations surrounding Bart's motive for this crime. It's been said he did it for inheritance money and life insurance money, and the defense claimed he was mentally ill. Kent Whitaker wrote a dedication to his son in his book, which says, quote, "My son, I love you. All is forgiven," end quote. Bloopers. Graduation time. Normally, this is usually where the story ends in terms of his mother and brother were gunned down, but would be, quote, victimized again if the state put to death his last remaining immediate family member, end quote. Ken's relentlessly campaign. Oh my gosh, the record button is on. Okay.